you're gonna see AC. You have two regimes. You have AC regime, right? And you have the DC regime. And let's talk about a little bit about the DC regime. This is kind of like the controls, right? So everything associated to controls, you're going to have that on the DC. You're going to have some sort of a circuit, a DC circuit, right? With usually you have something called the coils. The coils are usually some sort of a kind of circle. That's how it's represented, right? But it's really a induction, right? So, but we're going to see in the diagrams, the schematics are going to be represented as a circles. And then, of course, your ground, right? Usually, this DC battery, are going to be represented, in terms of standard-wise, right? On substations, we do have voltage levels around 125 volts DC, but you could also have 48 volts DC for controls, right? So that's, we're going to have a lot of discussions on this, because you're going to have hardware logic associated to these controls, right? And it's very important that you understand that controls, right? So when something is energized, usually it's a coil. Right? When something is energized, and that means that there is some path of 125 volts DC. Let's put a DC, for example. And I'm going to call this DC as a trip coil, right? So if this is energized, then an action is executed, right? For example, you're going to have another, let's assume, you're going to have some problems with that later. This is an introduction, right? So I'm not doing too much problems on this one. But this is a trip coil. And let's assume when this is energized, and I'm going to have here another circuit with 125 volts DC, and this is a breaker. Right? And let's assume this is a light. So what happened is, for example, you're going to see this kind of logic, right? So you have two circuits, right? This is circuit 1 and this is circuit 2, right? And you can see I have a switch, right? It's opening. And when I close it, what is going to happen is these 125 volts DC are going to energize my trip coil. When my trip coil is energized, what is going to happen, I'm going to give you all the course, the logic, right? And it's gonna open, my breaker, right? And therefore, this light is gonna be off, right? So that kind of logic. At this point, we have it. We will discuss more on that. But in the diagrams that actually you will read on chapter 1, right? Of course, the chapter 1 does have. This is an example of, again, a typical kind of DC, you see positive, negative, right? And instead of coils, well, again, these are coils, right? So when these circles are energized, generally, right, something is going to happen, right? And we will have to define what is exactly is going to happen, right? For example, we could say in here, so when this is energized, so all these kind of like, looks like a capacitors, but they are not capacitors, they are contacts, right? So when, for example, in normal conditions, all these contacts are closed, right? And if these are closed, and you have 125 volts DC in here, then this will remain open, for example. Right? So it's just giving you an example of typical type of circuits that you were going to see, right? So you're going to have to understand and look at it here. So it's always 124, some sort of DC voltage level within this, and the whole goal is to get what? All these coils being energized, right? That's the DC regime. And it's all about controlling. So when coils are energized, actions are gonna be executed. Like trip coils or close coils, for example, right? I can close a breaker, right? I can open a breaker, or I can close a breaker. I can open a switch, or I can close a switch, right? It's all about that. Any questions from there? So, and when you look at it, right? So, and probably I can put this on the notes, right? What really happened? Probably this record is nicer than what I have, right? And again, I just want to make sure that you do understand you have some sort of, DC battery. Of course, in here you just have 2 bars, but really this representation, I could say that it's something like this, right? Positive and negative, and you have some sort of, here is a circuit switcher, right? So I'm just kind of following the, and then what else do you have? In here you have some sort of a contact, right? And you also have another contact in here, right? And then you do have what? A 52A contact too. And then you have another sort of a coil, right? 52T, right? And then you have your negative, right? It's pretty much something like this, right? So you can see either I can put 2 bars like this, or it's really, this is the circle, right? So the equivalent. You need to have that kind of a spatial interpretation, right? So it is exactly the same. Any questions?
What's the difference between the A and the T of the 52 again?
52 is a breaker.
The 52A versus the 52.
No, okay, 50, yes. And that's a good question. So when you look at the IEEE C37A, right? So you will see contacts where 52A means normally open, and 52B, right, is well, actually we'll call it, where they call it like, the close, yeah. And 52B is the open.
Oh, the 52T though, right here.
It's trip.
Trip. Really? Why do you show
That's a trip coil.
Okay, so you're just showing as like a contact and
That's
coil
a trip
rather
coil.
than just one device?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a trip coil.
Gotcha.
Right. So, but this is very generic. Again, this is not a problem exercise. It's just to give you a flavor, right, of what's going on. If you don't understand at this point, it's fine. Don't worry, we're gonna go step by step, right? But that's what the chapter is telling you. You have 2 regimes. The first regime that I want you to understand. So that's where you're gonna have your circuit analysis and your logic analysis, right? As if you can see in here, there is some logic associated. Hopefully, you do notice what is happening in here. You have some sort of OR logic, right? Because you go either this path or either this path, right? And then you do have an AND logic where? With this one and this, right? So you're gonna start to see these kind of logics associated to controls, right? Where, 2 circuits in parallel means, right, OR, right? Circuits in series means AND, right? Or usually it's called, and you're gonna see in this chapter 1 when you do the readings, and we're gonna talk about something more like dependability, right? Or, and if you have AND is security, right? Who can tell me? I mean, in few words, what do you understand for, having options versus having restrictions, right? Because these are options, right? I can go either this or this. These ones are restrictions. That means that I seriously need to have this and this for something to happen, right? So who can tell me your thoughts? I mean, I want to hear some thoughts on that. On ORs and ANDs. Why would you want to do that?
Or
Why do you want to have ORs? Yes.
We use ORs just in case for failures, if one fails.
That's good. Good point, right? So in terms of failures, right? That's an excellent point, right? Exactly, that's what we do. Exactly, right? We want ORs for possibilities, for terms of failures. And ANDs, where do you think you want to have ANDs?
Security?
Yeah, security. What does it mean for security?
lockouts.
What does it mean? Give me in very simplistic words.
Condition before acting. So,
It's a condition before acting. That's
When
right.
there are like multiple criteria to meet like a certain type of fault, so you need like to fulfill multiple criteria. That's where the security comes from.
Exactly. That's another good point. So before acting, you want to make sure certain criteria is met, right? For example, before you trip, you want to make sure that you do a reading current, for example, right? And you're going to translate all this logic. So you are going to exercise a lot of this logic in this course, right? So we're going to see these kind of circuits and analyze and see what's going on, right? Typical circuits, I will do some, I could exercise some of the B courses circuits, but I also want to do some of the publicly available, circuits design that I can do, right? I might have to ask some of the entity ones, might not be available for you guys. So I'll have to ask. But anyway, so you need to understand logic, right? Okay, so that's the DC regime, right? But what you are protecting, really, you're protecting the AC regime, okay? Okay, so this is your control side, but what you really are looking at is, the relay is looking at the AC world, right? And it's very simplistic. This course is very, very simplistic in the sense of, what are you looking at? Currents and voltages in the AC regime, right? So that's why I want you to have clear that picture. DC for controls, and AC is what you are protecting, right? So this is our regime, AC. So AC means that you're going to be reading currents from the system and voltages from the system. The devices that you're going to utilize to read currents and voltages are going to be current transformers, CTs, and voltage transformers, or VTs, or power transformers, sometimes they call it, right? So as you can see here, you have a voltage transformer that is going to transform the high, a relay. One of these machines cannot actually take 69,000 volts, right? You need to lower it down, right? The voltage is going to lower it down. You don't have to read thousands of amps, right? You're going to, usually you put it on 5 amps, right? So you're going to transform the current, and you're going to transform the voltage to a very small, more manageable voltage and current levels. So that's the AC regime. We're going to have a lot of combinations and a lot of fun with this, right? Because again, PTs and CTs. Oh, here is just one line diagram. We're talking about 3 phases, and you know that we can have what? Y's and deltas, and different combinations, ABC rotations, CABs, and we can have a lot of fun with it. Okay? Is that clear? So that means that you're going to have minimum some sort of a square root of 3, or it's going to be exactly the same, and some sort of a linear approximation, right? Because we're going to check a little bit about these electromagnetics, right? So we did have a little bit of that on transformers, but there is a problem with transformers. Ideally, what is ideal? Ideally, this is conversion. Let's assume that this is 1,000 amps, and in here I read 5 amps, right? So the conversion is linear, right? What is the conversion? If I have 1,000 amps let's make it simple, 2000 amps. And then I have 5 amps in here. What is the multiplicative factor that this CT is?
400.
It's linear, right? So that means that every current that flows in here is going to be divided by 400. But it's linear. You understand that, right? That's for the simple class. For this class and for settings, it's not, right? So you need to take into account some non-linearities that we're going to study, right? And be very careful when you're doing your settings, right? So the same thing will happen with VTs, and we're going to check all that, all those models, right? So generally, as I mentioned, you do. This is what kind of like one line diagram. This is a line diagram. So just one line represents 3 phases, right? But you could see in the field, I mean, in here is another example of one line diagram, right? And we did talk about this one. It's just one line represents 3 phases, right? But you could also find, actually the actual 3 phases, right? Being plotted and show the same AC schematic. So you're going to have that kind of exposure as well of diagrams, schematics.
Which one is more common to find?
Depends. No, all of them are useful, all of them are common in the packages. When you're looking, at least for substation designs, right? So you're going to have, depends what information you're looking for, right? If you want to have executive summary, what do you think you're going to use?
With a single phase?
Yes, right? You want to have more detailed connection? Right. So, we're going to talk about these elements, right, that you will see. Protective relay. So you're protecting the AC schematics, you're protecting the AC world. Sorry, let me go back in here. Before we go. We're protecting this one. So your interrupting device usually is going to be some sort of a switch. We're going to call it circuit breakers, right? And in the chapter 1, you're going to read a little bit about circuit breakers, right? Circuit breakers are switches. That's it, right? They are mechanical switches that open or close. You know, that's it. But they are the combination. So relays, what they do is, relay is the break of that switch, right? So you can see that relays, or the relays will control this. Through what? What is the controlling mechanism you're going to use in the DC regime, right? So relays are going to have some sort of contact interaction in the DC regime to make this open or close, right? Questions from there? So you're going to have different type of breakers, and you can see in substations you can have the light tank breakers or the dead tank breakers. Right? So I want you to read that and go over that on the chapter. And it's all about different what do you see on the substation, right? So how big is the substation? I mean, light tanks, they have some reasons to be light tanks, right? And dead tanks, you have more space. So you have trade-offs. Everything is about trade-offs. What is your real estate? I mean, you have a small thing or you have a big, area. So given that, what is your combination? Your perfect combination in here is you're going to have relays and breakers, right? So that's what we're dealing with. And the eyes of the relays are going to be CTs and BTs or PTs, right? For this course. I'm not expecting, we have something else instead of BTs, right? Because BTs are very expensive. And we use CCVTs, right? Which is something more cheaper, right? And It acts as a VT, but you have capacitors involved. I don't want to go too much details on that for this course because it requires a little bit more like kind of like a other level stuff that we need to go over, right? But it does, in general, in terms of performance, is the same, right? So you're converting what? Voltage from one side to another side. In the same chapter 1, we, as I mentioned, right, we just kind of mentioned a little bit of the reliability. I mean, we call dependability when you have ORs, on securities when you have ANDs. But let's talk about that because this is the word that you're always going to find on a protective word, right? In the protection word. So reliability, right, of the relay, reliability of your system. What is it meaning? So you have two words. And this is going to be tested in your, in your test, right? So you have to understand that anything associated with protective relay is about reliability. And reliability means two words, dependability and security, right? What is dependability? Dependability is my ability to actually operate correctly, right? So the more ORs, the more chances I have to operate, right? Whether it's correctly or not, but I have more chances to operate, right? Security is my ability to not misoperate, right? So, will not operate incorrectly. So the more restrictions I add, the more secure, right? Is that clear? Do you see I mean, look at the best way I can do it again. We're mentioning this is OR, and this is AND, right? So, and this is the other thing about the thoughts. Nothing is perfect in the protective relay world. So you can never achieve fully dependable without taking a risk of security. You cannot be fully secure and risk dependability, right? So that's why it's the art. You have to make decisions, and you have to be conscious of your settings engineers and relay designers do have to take those decisions based on their system, right? What is best for that system? I mean, there is a lot of dynamics with different groups, right? So, but it comes all the discussions about this, dependability and security, right? So read that up. So, of course, there are other words, important words that you will read in chapter 1, is about selectivity, right? So, selectivity, as it says in there, continuity of service, right? So, if a fault, the best way that I portray this one is, if a fault occurs in my house, right, and Daniel is my neighbor, right, I don't want to take the power out of Daniel's, right?
I would take it for you.
I don't want to live, so I just take care of my issues, but I don't, affect him.
Not a sweat.
So that's selectivity. So you want to put zones of protection, right? You don't want to put your nose on others' zone business, right? So that's the other kind of art that we're gonna see it, right? Because, I mean, it seems simple, but when topologies gets more difficult, you will see it, that it really challenges a lot, right? So, how fast you need to operate, right? So probably, a fire on my house, right? It's a small fire, well, I can wait until the fire department come and, put it out, right? But sometimes you cannot. You actually have to react right away, right? So it will depend on your system, right? Again, your system. You need to know your system that you are protecting. Remember, if you cannot protect what you don't know, right? The same as, put it also like in terms of your life, right? So you need to protect what you know, right? Simplicity, of course, for more this is a very convoluted and political word, right? Simplicity. What I'm saying is because we try to make it, they have, I guess, this word, keep it simple, right? I guess it's keep it simple and stupid or something like that, right? But no, in reality, we try to make it simple, but the system might not be simple, right? Therefore, you need to compromise.
I have a question.
Yes.
Every time we add the protection switches the same, we're making it more complex. Is that correct?
Under what context?
Every time we're adding any component and we have to control it, so we're
Yes.
making it more complex. Is that correct?
It increases based on the complexity of the component that you're adding, yes, right? I mean, but how much security do you want in that system, right? You want to have several protection systems for only one thing, or only two, or you see my point? Do you want to have, in your house, if you're protecting your house from, vultures, right? You want to have a Ring camera and then probably a Vivint camera and probably, you see my point? So now you have two manufacturers, Ring and Vivint, right? Or probably do you want to have a Google camera? Three. You want to type, right? Put another device, kind of like those drones that patrol your house. 4 devices.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. You see? 4 things for protecting your house. It depends on, how you want to protect it. It's your house. You know your neighbor. I mean, you see my point? That's the best analogy I can tell you. So that's why the relay settings and relay designs, they need to know their area, right? How difficult it is. How is your neighbor? You need to put more cameras or less cameras, right? What is my budget, right? Am I earning $20,000 a year or $100,000 a year, right? Do I have, how loans, right? You see, all that kind of stuff comes into play for this, right? Simplicity, economics, right? What is the best way that I can, based on again, as I said, it depends on, is that substation, is New Orleans giving me money for it, right? If I put a new substation, I'm gonna increase the rate to you to recover that? It costs a lot of money, right? Right now, just as an example, I can tell you the Superdome, right? We have a substation. And there is a lot of political things about that substation. It has some flaws. Just put it in this way, right?
Amen.
It has some flaws, right? But to fixing those flaws, it will cost thousands of millions and millions of dollars and outages. But you see, I will have to take out the Superdome. I will have to take out some hospitals there, right? So what do you think? What was the problem in there? Dependability? For sure, right? I don't have dependability to actually take this out, and while I'm working on this, the others are, other substations are filling.
Isn't that selectivity?
But, excuse me?
Isn't that selectivity what you're saying?
No, that's dependability, not selectivity. And selectivity is when it will be, remember, it's when you're in others, you're reacting for others' problems, right? You have to react for your problems, not for others' problems, right? First. It is like when you are when you travel on the airplane, right? What do they say? First, you take care of yourself, and then, okay? Selectivity. It's different from, economics and simplicity. So you're going to have some those kind of questions. It's important that you know that. And it's very political, it's very depending on your money, what's the budget, you have to take some considerations, right? Questions from there? And as I mentioned, right, so it's all about political stuff, economics, personality factor, right? Probably, I don't know, the mayor likes to spend money, and he might give us, all the money to Enee, right? Location availability, this is very important when you read it, because it's not like I just can I put just a panel and a breaker in here. No, there is a lot of things going on. First of all, regulations. Bureaucracy, of course, right? Even if you breathe air, you have bureaucracy to breathe air, right? You need to pay what? You need to go taxes. You need to go over environmental impacts, right? I am destroying the house of a chipmunk. I don't know, right? If I put a breaker in there, right? Is the sound is going to affect, the surroundings of the houses, for example, right? And then the neighbors are going to make all these, rallies to probably, oh no, I don't want this. You see, there is a lot of social factors that come into place, right? To make things right or to make things, more complicated, right? It depends. So you will see that a lot in this, right? So location availability and available fall indicators. Well, how risky is this, right? So it's really we're going to have a lot of problems in this area, right? So we need to analyze those kind of stuff whenever we looking at this, right? So because of these social factors in the relays, you're going to see bureaucracy, politics, and regulations. And in this course, I want you to be exposed to that, right? To just not just testing you on this, but where are all these things coming from, right? So we have regulations, and that's, for example, NFPA. Right? That's what I asked you to do. We're gonna read it, and we're gonna assign some assignments on. You see rules. So our protections are based on rules, on bureaucracy, for example, right? NFPA says you have to have an overcurrent of 1.25% of your load current of your motor. What you're going to do, you're going to calculate your settings based on that. NERC, right, our famous association, you're going to see it, right? It says, oh, no, you cannot drop the load, for X amount of seconds, right? So if you do have a fault there, you better keep, you better come back into, 10, whatever seconds, right, we want to do. You don't trip for overload, or they give you rules, and we're gonna tailor our settings based on those rules, right? IEEE standard, so you're not gonna trip for over voltage more than 110%. So those numbers, right, are in those documents, right? So settings engineers and relay design and standards group in Enee, what they use is collect this information and put it kind of like a recipe. Hey, if you're looking at line protection, these are the rules that you need to follow. Because if you don't follow, and then the government comes and audit Enee, we're going to be penalized by, $1 million per day, for example.
Minimum, right?
Yeah, minimum, right? And then, of course, you can see the economic factor, right? So rules are important, and that's why you're going to be exposed. That's why, believe it or not, the simple things like 500 words, right? Seems funny, but it gives you the sensation, really, when you have things to say, you have to mean it. And sometimes people, it's not government, sometimes it is what it is, right? You don't mean it, you get penalized. That's my teaching to you, right? With minor things, so you get exposed to that. And you will see very silly things, like 1.25%. If you go just 1 decimal, you're gonna get penalized $1 million per day, right? You see my point? I wanted to give you that message. All right. Any questions? Okay. Now we're going to talk about relays, right? Classification of relays, and you're going to see that when you read chapter 1, right? So the way that actually the book classified, right? So really, a relay to me is just an intelligent device, right? Or a mechanical device that actually controls a switch, right? So the switch without the relay is nothing, and the relay without the switch, they both complement each other, right? And whatever is interrupting that, I'm gonna say that's associated to, everything on protect, right? On protections. But you also, remember, it's controlling a switch, right? But you can control switches. When we discuss about switches, you can have different type of switches. Just one single throw, single pole, single throw, or you can have multiple connections, right? Probably you could have, for example, this is a simple. I'm gonna say. This is a simple kind of switch, right? But you could also have, let's assume, this switch, right? What is the difference? This is only one switch, single pole, single throw. In here you can have single pole, double throws, right? So you can have either this one, this path, or this path, right? For example.
Isn't that a double pole single throw? Is that what you said?
Well, depends on how you look at it.
That's true, I guess.
But the idea is you have two options and one connector, right? So you regulate it, right? So either you go this one or this way, right? And that one, we're gonna have, you will see, of course, you have tap changers on transformers and drive generators on the equipment, but that's why they call it, the book, they call it regulating, because you're actually having options to choose, right? This is interesting enough, but what happened in the past, right, before microprocessor relays, you do have units only for tripping and units for, after you trip, you wanted to command to reclose, right? So that's why the book has this one, is again, is associated to, where once you trip, you have another device that actually make you reclose, right? So this device trip you, take you out, and this device put you back, right? Is that clear? This device gives you options, right? Tap changers, or we will see that kind of stuff. Funny enough, so we have monitor. And I can tell you a story that we have right now. I'm championing a technology called traveling wave relays, right? Traveling wave relays is some sort of, it's a time domain relay. We're talking about, what we're gonna talk about in here is more phase domain. But the time domain relays is a technology that we're doing some research, right? And we don't want to trip anything. We're just studying. We're looking at what this relay is reading from our system and getting data to make educated and technical decisions, right, before we put it in our system. So this relay, we have right now two on Mott Lake Sabine and Elton to Carter, and they're just looking at our system. They're just monitoring, they're not tripping, they're not reclosing, they're just looking the system. They're like a sentinels right now, right? Looking, reading voltages and reading currents and getting data, right? So this is what the book is talking about, right? Protective regulation, reclosing, monitoring. Now this one is very important. I mean, we have auxiliaries, right? Auxiliaries are those relays. We have a bunch of them. We're trying to get rid of auxiliary relays. In reality, right? Those 94 relays are big, and at some point I want to bring some of those relays in here so you can see it. So these ones, again, auxiliary is, it's kind of like a help, right? It's a back relay that will help you to trip. And look at auxiliary relay more or less like a multiplexer. You know what a multiplexer is? One in, multiple outs, right? So you trip one contact, and then you're gonna have multiple contacts. Right? Those are pretty much what you can see as auxiliary, right? So it helps you from one contact to execute multiple contacts, right? And there are other classifications of relays. I mean, the most popular, again, is gonna be your protective, regulating, reclosings, and monitoring auxiliary, right? Those are the ones that we're gonna check. Okay, so talking about this, what happens is at some point, right? So you're gonna see, for example, typical practice. So you have a relay, right? A relay that opens and closes a breaker, right? So one relay is controlling this breaker. So I'm going to increase my dependability. I want to have a backup. So you're going to have a primary and a backup that controls a breaker. Is that clear? So when a fault occurs, right, both needs to see it. The same fault, right? If only the primary see the fault, but the backup didn't see the fault, do you see a problem? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Why?
If the primary would fail because the backup's not getting the same data, right?
They should see the same thing, right? So and you can start to see now the concept of, well, by adding primary and backup, right, I'm increasing my complexity, right? But I need to increase my dependability, right? Because if my Schweitzer relay fails, at least I have something to trip my breaker, right? Remember, breaker without relay is nothing, right? You understand that? So, and that's why, at some point what we need to do is, we have to have primaries and backups. You will see a lot of our panels, whenever we, hopefully, I don't know this class, we'll try. I will talk to you guys to see if we can take you a substation or something so you can see actually the panels, right? Or we can go to our famous Devonby substation.
Not this time?
Midtown, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to talk to, relay design manager and see what it is. But it's not gonna be this time, right? So probably it's gonna be a Friday. I mean, is that fine for any of you in here? Any problems on a Friday afternoon?
What time?
I'm gonna say probably around 2 o'clock. For a visit substation, yes?
I have a class at 2.
Until what time?
2 to 3.
Okay. What about at 1? You have a lab? Well, I had to do it at 3:30, or what about 3:30?
It's fine.
I'll just have to know so I can take off work.
Same.
Alright, you don't have to, probably we'll do it as an optional, right? I just need to coordinate, and probably I'll ask a EEE student branch to, have the coordinate. Right. So I can take you to one substation and you can see it. Yeah, you don't have to take off work, really. But if you can, that's good. All right. So that's important. It says correct, right? So really, the correct approach is you to have, dual panels, right? And you could have, some analysis where it was incorrect or you don't have any conclusions on a particular event. Right? So, you have some time. The next topic, right? The next topic that you're gonna see in this chapter, we're talking very on the surface, right? And we're gonna go more details while chapters progress. So we have in our minds, we have AC regime, DC regime. The DC regime is what do the controls. AC regimes is what we're looking at it by CTs and PTs. We have classifications of relays, protective, protective, control, reclosings, right? What else we discussed? We discussed about reliability, which the reliability means two things. What? Security and dependability, right? We talk about selectivity, right? Complexity and money, right? And a social factor, right? That all of these one is a big part of ingredients that's gonna drive your decisions to make your protection system, right? Now, I'm gonna zoom into this concept of selectivity, right? We need to define what is my area of protection, right? So my area of protection, we're gonna talk about something called zones of protection, right? We're gonna look at, and each zone of protection depends on the device that you're gonna be protecting. Again, it's what you're protecting, right? And we need to study all these devices. Of course, we're not gonna study everything in this course with all the technical details, but generators, transformers, buses, lines, right? And other, capacitor banks and reactor banks. For this course, I'm expecting, because they're kind of simple and easy to look at regulations, transformers, lines, right? Buses, a little bit of transmission lines, right? And capacitor banks. Probably that's what we're gonna look at up to the end here, right? So this kind of stuff is what we're gonna look at. So we need to look all the mathematical and technical details of each component, right? So remember, if you don't know your system, can you protect it? No, right? You need to know, but also you need to know your environment, your economical situation, your social situation. Do you have, people against your ideas on protections, right? All that stuff needs to come into play. Questions? So, and this is one nice screenshot of zones of protection, right? For example, and let me see if I can do a simple screenshot. So I want you to see, right, in this graph. First of all, this is a one-line diagram, right? First of all, let's look at this transformer, right? And you can see the transformer zone of protection is this area, right? And what breakers are protecting this transformer? When a fault occurs, you have this breaker and this breaker, right? These two squares, right? Is that clear? Now, let's do another analysis in here, right? So I'm gonna select this. This breaker is protecting what?
The bus and the motor.
This motor, right? And the bus too. Yes. Right? So you can start to see, about zones and selectivities, right? So if a fault, let me ask you this, right? If a fault occurs in here, right, inside this zone, I'm expecting what? This one and this one will isolate the fault. This is their business. Is the pink one gonna trip? If it trips, what happens? It's a means operations, right? because it's tripping for a fault that is not in their zone of protection. However, right, so with this same philosophy, what happens if these breakers are not reacting and the fault still is in there? Then this one can actually trip to isolate the fault, right? So that's kind of, you're gonna see, I'm gonna ask you to do some exercises to encourage you understand about this zone of protection, where you need to trip, right? And we're gonna do some problems, yeah, probably next class, just to, to do a little bit of exercise on where, zones, where do we need to trip, right? So we need to have clear, so in here, for example, if a boss fault occurs in here, right? Let's assume now another event, right? Okay. A fault occurs in here. Now you tell me which breakers. Let's put letters, right? Let's put A, B, C, and D.
C and D.
C or D?
Okay, I have some. Want to hear some more thoughts? Okay, you say
Oh,
C.
C and D.
Oh no, I see it now, because it was, C and D.
Okay, thank you. You see, that's correct. So because of the zone, right? These breakers, C and D, are protecting what zone?
The bus.
Right? Is that clear? I mean, right now it's clear because I give you the dots, right? And you can see this, so you need to identify the zones at some point, right? But that's the exercise, right? Yes?
So if there's a fault in the zone, we expect all the breakers in that zone
That's
to
correct.
trip.
That's correct. Right? Questions from there? Yeah, I mean, if a fault occurs in the motor, what is it? If a fault occurs in the bus in here, right? That's it, I guess, right? I mean, for this type of problem. Do you see that? This is a typical exercise. I'm telling you, this is a typical, even, and as I mentioned, this the PE exam, you have a lot of these questions, right? So it's just to exercise that you understand what is your zone of protection, right? What breakers needs to trip or mistrip, right? I say mistrip because you need to be careful with what I'm asking for, right? Okay, so that's a typical exercise. Any questions from there? You're going to have it, and then we're going to have some discussions and go back and forth. All right. Okay, 5 more minutes. And so, again, what happened is everything is associated to your, circuit breaker is going to isolate, right, and clear the fault on your zone. So remember, what fault are we talking about? Bolt faults, right? Because by opening the breakers, those bolt faults are gonna disappear, right? So you're gonna have that kind of stuff going on in there. Now the breakers, the important thing about the breakers, usually, right, these breakers have CTs on them, right? And we call it, if you have a dead tank, dead tank breaker, so you're gonna have a donut CTs associated. Now, when we go to a substation, I don't think I have some pictures in here, but I could present some pictures that you can see that those breakers are gonna have CTs, right? That will read the current of the lines that are actually breaking, right? And they will define the zones of protection based on those CTs and BTs, right? So for this particular case, I guess this slide doesn't really paint a good enough talks about the overlapping protections. And here you can clearly see overlapping, right? So this is overlapping this, right? So the boss protection is overlapping what? My transformer and my motor zone protection. So you could actually have overlapping, right? So when I did the exercise in here, of course, if I have a boss fold in here, you have C and D, but C is part of the transformer protection, right? You see that? So you have overlapping, potentially overlapping. You see how things are going to start to come. It depends on the topology. This is a topology, right? That you will see. We're going to start, and we're going to call this topology a radial, right? Because it's just one line. Right? Things are going to get more complicated. But anyway, so with that being said, we have these few minutes more. Download the software. Get this quick set. If you have problems and I want to assign probably tomorrow the reading, the 500 words, read it, and the forum is already there. Not by this week, but the following week, you're going to have your other assignment, which is get one question. And so for undergraduates, it's only one question and one answer. For graduates, I expect twice. 2 questions, 2 answers. Okay? All right? Is that clear? And yes.
Could you post the slides on Moodle as well?
Yes, when I finish this one, yes.
Thank you.
Handbook, do we have to pay for that? That protective relay thing, but it's a new.
Yeah, I mean, you should have access, right?
Best practices.
This one, right? The C37.2? Yeah. Remember I don't have internet, but remember I said you have to go through the library, right? Library.uno.edu, and then you need to request, access to the database IEEE. It's free for use too. I mean, and if you don't know, go to the library and they will teach you how to go over the library.uno.edu. All right? So I cannot give you they will give you an account with a PIN number so you can access it. Right? Okay, so I'm encouraging, especially for graduate students. I'm glad you do one, but for graduate students, I encourage you to use those resources. Right? I'm going to be posting those more standard. And we're going to use it. We're going to use it for the exercise. That's all, right? All right. Well, see you Thursday.